right. Well, welcome back. I think we're kind of collected. We're the comment about random shit guys. I am Noob Frostmage. This is my co-host. Who cares? Hello. Who cares?
Hello, Frost. We're losing everything.
I don't know. Mine seems to be working okay. I hear you. I see you. We are new format that we're continuing to work on. We're still working with some of the technical difficulties, but I think we're going to try and go for a full hour if possible. Um, Exciting stuff happening. Let's hit the refresh and we'll just start right away. Oh, I forgot to start my timer. That's what we need to put on here is a timer. Okay, let's just add that to the list of stuff. Where's my phone here? The timer for 8 minutes still. Okay, let's hit the refresh. You want to go first?
No, you're doing a good job. You.
All right, let's hit it and we'll go. Two brothers beat California. Oops, I missed one there. Two brothers beat California groom to death at his wedding reception after crashing the celebration. So this is coming through People, like People Magazine, People News Source. Two brothers beat the California groom to death at his wedding reception after crashing the party. Obviously, I would say, some sort of gang-related thing. So the two guys that beat him up are brothers. It's not that they're his brothers.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
How do you jump to gang related?
Well, because people just don't randomly jump into that.
Oh, okay.
Right? They just don't show up and start wailing and beating some guy. It's usually gang related. Calgary had last year somewhere in the range of 28 murders in the city. Of those 28 murders, I would argue that 25 of them are gang related. That's a really, really large portion. Now, gang related also means drive-by shooting, and someone gets, like one guy shooting at the other guy, and one is an innocent bystander. It's not that they were targeted. That's not the same thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the violence is because, yeah. Go ahead.
I think it'd be interesting to look into. I don't think either one of us can actually comment on both of these things. It would be interesting to look into exactly, but I think you're making a bit of a leap here that it's gang related. It could be just a couple of guys that are just troublemakers. Maybe they've got trouble with the law anyway.
Well, that's part of the format, right?
We're going to go over there and join it and then decide to wail on the guy.
And kill the guy, not just wail on the guy, kill the guy.
Well, they killed the guy. Saying that it's gang related, inferring that the two brothers are gang members of one gang, and that the groom was a gang member of the other.
Could be mistaken
when you read the story, but
which is the whole point of what we're doing here. We read the article,
right,
we give some sort of supposition of what we think.
Don't jump on it before you read the story, kind of deal. So
this is why this is what people do all the time.
Yeah, we do. Yes, everybody does that. People do that. Yes.
So this is us challenging.
That's why I jumped on it.
Yeah, it's us challenging our perceived notions of what it is.
Exactly. That's why I jumped on it, because you made a comment, and you may be right when we read the story.
Yeah. Well, it's also people, right? Which is part of the reason why I said in our opening in our video capture that you want to make sure that you have this people thing, the bottom left, right above my picture. You want to make sure you have that in there so you can see what the source is. Now, this is people, I think, is sensationalist media to begin with, right? I think there's if this was a really big thing, it would have made the 6 o'clock news across the country in the U.S., of course. Maybe not so much in Canada, but it didn't. It made the People magazine. Mm-hmm. So, we got to find out who this guy is. Obviously, People magazine thinks this guy is a celebrity of some sort and thinks it's worthy of their viewership. We're going to read the story here real quick and see what they say and challenge my assertion that I think it's gang related. Yours, we're going to challenge yours that it's not gang related.
I'm not saying that it's not gang related.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you jumped on that bandwagon a little too quickly.
I think that's exactly what people do, and we should challenge these things, which is why I make some of
Right.
the statements that I do. There's no evidence
Okay.
based on that title that leads us to the conclusion that it's gang related. That is absolutely correct.
Right.
But
Right.
reading
Okay.
the
Well,
article,
let's read it.
just reading the title, I'm like, why would that happen? And we make these leaps from here to here to here, and very quickly we have to make those connections of why that is. I don't think two people
Mhm.
walking down the street, two brothers as it turns out, walking down the street just said, "Hey, fuck it, let's go crash this wedding and then kill this guy." Right?
Why not? The celebration is in a public place, and these
Nothing
guys.
there says that it's in a public place.
No,
So-
but we're stuck with supposing
Right?
here now that our position is that, there are a lot of troublemakers out there that
Potentially.
bars and whatever else you see, and
Yeah.
they're not gang related, and they just go and cause trouble. So I'm saying I'm
Bunch of
I'm offering you a
ne'er-do-wells,
different
yeah.
story that's gang related here, that quite possibly these two guys were in the vicinity. They may have extensive criminal records already.
Wow, nothing leads you to that conclusion that that's true.
It may. I said may.
It could be just
They may.
you and me are brothers right here. Right here, you and me are brothers. You and I just decide to walk down the street and say, "Oh, look, it's a wedding in a Greek restaurant." We're like,
You and I
"Here."
don't have a criminal record. You and I aren't of that kind of
Wow,
mindset.
we same reason that you think these guys have criminal records. They may or may not have that. Let's
Yeah, they
quickly
may or
get
may
into the
not.
story here.
I said
two
they
brothers.
may.
So
Yep.
the title here, I think, is problematic as well because it has the number 2 as opposed to the written 2. I think that goes against writing conventions, but we won't judge people too harshly on that. Two brothers beat California groom to death at his wedding reception after crashing it. Murdered the groom. John was celebrating his nuptials a couple years ago when he was attacked at his wedding reception, held in the backyard of a family member in Chino, California. Okay, Chino, I think, is a suburb of LA. I could be wrong on that. Ronnie and so-and-so brothers convicted second-degree murder. They found guilty assault. Wee hours when the uninvited brothers showed up. They lived nearby and likely heard the festivities and went to the reception. They were later seen taking part in the reception, dancing, snapping photos with women who were at the party. So that's unlikely for them to be rival gang members. Rival gang members typically don't show up to the rival and start partying it up with that. That's not usually what happens. Right?
Exactly.
Now,
Yeah,
that could be
yeah.
wrong because as far as I know, neither one of us, you and I, have ever been in a gang, right? But we could be wrong on that.
Mhm.
They left the party, came back to, oh shit, this took a really good story. This is a good story. We're 1 minute left. Came back from a trail behind the house. Groom had no idea of the return. The brother stood behind a fence and taunted him, telling him to jump to the other side. Once and his family jumped the fence, the brothers began hitting them with bats and fists. So they crashed the party. They were likely asked to leave the party. Didn't like that they were being asked to leave the party, and then came back in a trail behind the home and taunted the groom and his family members to jump the fence. Once they did that, then they started pummeling them with bats and fists. A family member was able to pull a bat from one of the brothers who ran into an unrelated residence. They were followed by the groom who ran into the yard unarmed. A few minutes later, the brothers were seen jumping the fence out of the residence with a single bat, which was never found. The police got there, responded to the family member, body in the yard, died within minutes of suffering blunt force trauma to the head. The younger brother said he was never at the reception. However, a photo booth image of him and his older brother posing with a female guest was found in his front pocket after his arrest. It certainly seems like a smoking gun for him being there and lying to the police and saying he wasn't there when he's got it in his pocket. Going to be tough, going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Unimaginable grief. Clear GoFundMe raise, makes you smile, leaves behind nothing. That's it. That's all we get. What do you think about that? I didn't hear any
It's
gang-related
two
issues.
neighbor. It's a neighbor. They're neighbors, close, like maybe not side by side, but they're close
Neighborhood.
enough that
Yeah.
these two guys heard the party, heard the festivities. Obviously, at a private residence, they had the wedding reception maybe in their backyard.
That's what it says, which was held in the backyard of the family member. Yeah.
Um, and so these guys decided that they would go and check it out, join the festivities.
Meaning crash the party, and it does say that after,
They
the
crashed
title.
the party, and then it would seem reasonable that, I don't think it said this explicitly, but it would seem reasonable that they got asked to leave.
Yeah.
Maybe they were being lewd and inappropriate, or who knows exactly what was happening. But it would seem reasonable that they were asked to leave.
They didn't like being asked to leave.
They didn't like it. They went home. They got a baseball bat. They armed themselves, and then they came back. They're obviously smart enough to be on the other side of the fence on public property, probably.
It doesn't say
so
that. It says a residence.
Yeah, but they're on the other side of the fence, they said. Right? So that tells me something about that. They're smart enough to not to go back onto the property of the wedding reception.
That's correct. They could be on the neighbor's house.
Taunted them from there. Yeah, we don't know what other side of the fence they're at now, but they're on the other side of the fence. So they could have just gone right back to the receptionist, the party, and walk in like they did the first time, but apparently they didn't. They went to the other side of the fence.
So I would say, right, it lists here that they walked along, they left the party, but later came back through a trail behind the home. The groom had no idea they returned. The brothers stood behind a fence and taunted the groom, telling him to jump to the other side. So when we continue on with the story, I think they probably jumped through a trail, and the trail just happened to be in the backyard of someone else's home, which is adjacent to the reception.
Yeah,
they're trying to get the groom to jump into the backyard where they're at. And the reason why that is because the next paragraph says a family member was able to pull a bat from one of the brothers who ran into an unrelated residence. So if we have a fence along the backyard separating all the houses on the block, you would think that the trail, they would be jumping into the public space that you're talking about. If that's true, and you get the guy to jump over the fence, would you just then jump another fence into the neighbor's yard? Right? The two guys that are killing this guy are not jumping a second fence, which means they're already in that yard to begin with.
Yeah, but why is the trail going through somebody else's yard? That doesn't make sense either. But that's kind of more mute. We're not really worried about what happened. So obviously, it doesn't sound gang related.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. It does not sound that way at the moment.
It just sounds like two guys that are conceivably troublemakers. They decided to crash the party for something to do. Maybe they thought they can get free booze or something. So
potentially, yeah.
And, got asked to leave for whatever reasons. Again, we don't know. We're guessing at things. Maybe they were being lewd. Maybe they were being problems. They got asked to leave. They did leave apparently, but they went home and got baseball bats. Came back, taunted the groom on another side of some fence we don't know about.
A fence, correct.
And they were obliged. The people hopped over. Some kind of battle ensued. They ran into another residence of some sort. And unfortunately, ultimately, the groom took a blow to the head, at least one blow, resulting in his death.
Demise, yep.
And he left behind, I think it said, obviously a wife. I think it said a daughter as well, didn't it? I think there was something about a daughter.
He leaves behind his daughter, who will be in good hands with someone's family. I'm assuming that. There's no reason to know why that is. Loving son, brother, father, cousin, partner, family member, and friend. Always make you smile. Not only survived by his new wife, but also his daughter. We don't know if that's their daughter or his daughter from a previous relationship.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he just
Just as that daughter.
Because they do say Lily will be looked after Joe's family. Joe is
Right.
now the deceased, so quite conceivably from a different from a different relationship, and
Yeah.
yeah. So
Takeaways.
no,
What do you think about this story? Like we kind of went through a little bit.
I hope they got a nice long lengthy sentence.
I don't know if it said that what they got here.
They got convicted, I think, and uh, DA's office. So
Charged as second degree murder.
right.
And that was all it said. It doesn't actually say the length of
And
the
quite
sentence.
quite conceivably, the sentence hasn't been handed down yet.
That's possible, yeah.
They were found guilty and to be sentenced later. So I hope they get a nice lengthy sentence for an unnecessary
I agree.
cause of offense.
I think this is questionable reporting, but again, it's people as when I go looking for my news to find out about what's going on in the world, people is not where I go to. So, but that's just a judgment on my part.
Yeah.
All right, next one.
All right then.
All right.
What were your thoughts? You didn't really.
Oops. Yeah. So again, I made an assumption. I made a leap. We're still not sure based off of this whether my assertion is incorrect. They could still very well be gangbangers, but not gang members. Like that, this guy may not be a gang member. Maybe there's the two brothers are gang members, and we're not invited to the group, right? So that's another.
It wasn't gang related.
It wasn't gang related.
Yeah.
Yes, right. So by saying that they're
I can
gang
get
members,
it.
it could, right? But I'm glad that I was wrong, right? I'm sorry that this young man perished. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just is what it is, right?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, but
Okay. Here we go. 3, 1, 2, 3. This is oops. Let me start here. Why this retired accountant is training to drive buses in the Bow Valley. Okay, so this is a little different article because you can see that this thing here, this is a video clip. I don't know if we've ever done a video clip. So let's see what happens here. Can you hear any of this?
Behind the wheel of this Rome transit bus is retired accountant Alex Fuller.
Behind the wheel of the
Before he
Rome
started
transit
training
bus, he
last
started
month,
training
he'd
last
only ever
month,
driven
only
cars
he's
and
never driven
motorcycles
cars and
when he's-
motorcycles. Okay, so let's, you go first. Why this retired accountant is training to drive buses in the Bow Valley? What do you think?
well, I mean, he's retired, so maybe he's just looking for something to do. It's not volunteer work. Don't know if he needs the money, maybe. Obviously, one of those two things would seem to be why do you do anything when you're retired, right? You need to fill your time, but I'm well off type of deal, and so you go volunteer at the food bank. Does maybe he needs some money, so he goes and gets an actual job that, but why doesn't he go back to accounting if he needs the money, so it's kind of.
He'd probably make more money being an accountant than being a bus driver, I would suggest.
Right, yeah.
But,
and maybe he's just tired of being an accountant and wants to do something 9 to 5, as it were, and he comes to work and he leaves work. He doesn't take anything home with him.
well, not the bus, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't park the bus out front of his house, yeah.
Where's Bow Valley?
Good question. I'm not.
I think Bow Valley is either like Canmore or Banff area, which is about an hour and a half west of Calgary in the Rocky Mountains. So I suspect that you're probably right. He's retired. Why is he doing what he's doing? Doesn't want to necessarily go back to accounting where it's slow, and then super busy for 4 months where he's got to work 20 hours a day for 3 weeks to get taxes, all the rest of it. Just wants to drive the bus for 6 hours a day and then come home and just enjoy, right? The fact that he's a retired accountant, he probably made fairly decent money doing that. So it's just things to occupy your time. I know some retired people. I actually had a retired person work for me, and they said I was just bored. I retired at 58 or 65 or whatever the ages that he retired, and then he took a year off. And he said I was just so bored of doing that I came back to work because I wasn't ready to retire. The old guy across the way that I buy my beer from here, he retired when he was 57. He said he took 3 years off. He said I was just so bored. So now he works at the liquor store because it's slow stress. He's done by 10 o'clock, right? So, all right. What does this guy say? Training entry-level drivers is part of Rome's plan to shore up staffing levels ahead of another busy summer season. All right, so there's a lot of Asian populations that come to Calgary and then go to see Banff. Like the Rocky Mountains is a unique geological phenomenon around the world, although it spans 2 continents, right? They just don't have that. I think the closest one would probably be like the Andes, maybe, or Kilimanjaro, the ranges between Nepal and India. Nepal and China.
Saw an ad for Rome in the paper.
But when he saw an ad, he decided to apply.
The
Bus driver job sounded very appealing to him. There's a lot of competition for staff in the Bow
and in
Valley.
recent years, it's been tough
for Rome to recruit enough drivers.
CEO Martin Bean says they've taken matters into their own hands.
Taken matters into their own hands by
as a training school.
Qualified as a training school, so now we're able to train drivers straight from scratch and get them to become class drivers
and grow
their experience with us. They also started to offer staff accommodations with one rental property that they have in town. That is interesting because Banff and Canmore have like a 0% residency rate. So even if they can get staff, the staff have nowhere to live. And if they do get a place, the $15 an hour, because it's mostly customer service type job, restaurants, low-paying retail jobs, things like that. Even if they're getting paid $15 an hour and they work 40 hours a week, it's still not enough to cover their accommodations because there's 0% vacancy rate.
Right. When you talk to some of these people, I think you and I said we play a lot of poker. We play brick and mortar poker.
Right.
And sometimes you're at the table and you're talking to people and they will express that they've worked in Banff, they worked at different restaurants, whatever else. And then somewhere in the conversation comes up that they actually have to roommate with people.
Yes.
And that there's 2 and 3 of them sometimes living in a condo or something that they're renting just because they can't find a place, and B, it's just too expensive. It's very expensive to live there as well. So
when I went to university, like when I first moved to Calgary to go to university, and I guess I had lived in a place for a year and it was right off of downtown. It wasn't a very nice neighborhood, so we moved after a year, and then I went to university. So I moved up by the university. When we got a tour of the place, it was a 2-bedroom apartment. My girlfriend and I at the time, we thought that we would rent one of the rooms out to students or whatever else. When we walked in there, we're pretty sure that there was 8 people living in that 2-bedroom apartment. It was just like mattresses on the floor of people sleeping. It wasn't even like
really
there were, maybe it was 6. Either way, there was no bed frames. There was no baseboards. It's just 3 mattresses thrown all over the bed. We just kind of walked around and looked around, and we have to see past that, right? We understand that students are students, but this is the same sort of thing you're talking about. I'm not shocked or surprised that Banff is, and to hear people say that's what they're doing.
Yeah, no,
Okay, well, 20 seconds here. We also working through a purchase that was, and this is the city of Banff. Also working through a purchase that approved staff accommodation building in Canmore. That's 5 bedrooms. We're really excited about having that.
Having enough drivers is
more important than ever
as Rome plans to expand
that service. Right, so Rome is the name of the transit service that Canmore Banff has. I did say it was in Canmore Banff because of the Bow Valley, where they're going to live and how they're going to live, and what one way that these guys are looking to address the accommodation issue. So, final thoughts?
Right. So I think this brings up the retirement part of it, that he's retired. And I've seen this kind of, read this kind of thing before, is you have a career, and you're so focused on career and everyday life that working people tend to, maybe not tend the right word, but don't have any hobbies or any interests. Because what do? You get up in the morning, you go to work, you spend your day at work, you come home, you eat, you clean up, you're tired and stuff. You watch some TV, you go to bed, and then you do it
Rinse
again.
and repeat, yeah.
Right? In there somewhere, you do some laundry, you do some grocery shopping. During the summer weathers, you mow the lawn and stuff, and you don't ever really develop any hobbies or outside interests. So that what happens is you end up retiring, and now you have nothing. It's like you don't have anything to fall back on. So you find yourself sitting in a rocking chair, staring at the wall, watching the proverbial paint dry. And this guy said, "I'm not going to do that," and sees an ad and says, let's go give that a try. Expand his horizons. He learns something new. He learns how to drive a bus. And he figures he's going to get social engagement. People are going to get on the bus, off the bus. Hi, how you doing? So good
And a lot
for
of
him.
tourists, right?
Yeah, a lot of tourists.
A lot of
good for
Calgary
him.
people drive out there, and Banff and Canmore, at least Banff is for sure, are instituting like no driving downtown, right? And,
Oh, yeah.
they're increasing parking rates and things like that, so you cannot park on the street anymore, and other bylaws to encourage you to take the transit. The fact that this
Okay.
picture right here says it's a 100% battery electric. Well, I think by definition battery is electric, but we won't argue with the Banff City Council on that. But yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, well, good for him.
Cool. All right, let's see the next one. This is this ought to be interesting. Let's hit the start button again. You get to go first this time. Trudeau Foundation to return $200,000 donation over possible connection to China.
So there are articles surfacing that CSIS, that is the Canadian Spy Agency, has uncovered various Chinese connections, people in Canada with affiliations back to China and Chinese government, I guess, and that they are trying. They tried, and maybe to some extent successful, I don't know, to influence the last election by supporting Justin Trudeau in his rebid for, in the election for
Leader of the
federal
country.
election. Yeah, so I think he's been kind of trying to downplay it, and CSIS was kind of getting up in arms about it, that this was important also. It would now seem that after the fact, like, you're going to return the $200,000 donation over possible connection. Hey guys, we don't want your money. We already won the election, but here's your money back. That kind of seems empty, as it were.
Well,
but,
it makes it worse when you get a little bit further into the article. Now, we haven't gotten into the article, but I did open it up in the side window here, so I can read the very opening paragraph, which is where I'm drawing this conclusion from.
is that the one? The Trudeau Foundation returning $200,000 received 7 years.
7 years ago. So it was before he was prime minister. Right.
The
Because
first election.
The first election, not the second election.
Yeah.
But again, as you
Right.
said, the $200,000 he got from 7-ish years ago, he used to get elected. But once you're in power, at any level, any of the three levels, you have traction to gain more funds, right? So at any level, the rules. Go ahead.
I assume that the articles, the headlines I was catching and reading, it had to do with the last election.
Yeah.
Conceivably, it's both elections.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But because, so if I run in the next election, unless I start today, I can gather and get some funds to help me get elected. But whoever the incumbent is, has had 4 years to gain traction, right? Because they've been in there and they can gain that. So the rules, at least in this country, by and large, are in place to keep the incumbent in power. So by and large, you probably should not run against an incumbent. When the mayor of Calgary left, when Doer left, and was it Broadway, Broadbent, something or another, there was 27 people ran, and he was in office for 10, 12 years, something like that. When he retired, and I ran against him in 2010, there was 25 or 26 people running for the mayor of Calgary. Nenshi ends up winning, and the first year he's got 5 people or 10 people running against him. The second time he ran, he had 2 people run against him, and one guy just half-heartedly just said, well, we just can't let him have a runaway, so I'll run against him. He didn't really want to run, but he just didn't want to just roll over and let the mayor win again. And then the third election, then she just took it again. So, all right, to our article here. The Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation, which happens to be Justin Trudeau's dad, who was the Prime Minister of Canada in the 70s and maybe even the 80s, says it is returning $200,000 it received 7 years ago after alleged potential connection to Beijing. Globe and Mail cited an unnamed national security source published by the Chinese government to influence Trudeau after he became Liberal leader. The report alleged a Chinese billionaire was instructed by Beijing to donate $1 million to the fund in 2014, the year before the Liberals came to power under Trudeau. The report says that he and a second wealthy Chinese businessman donated $1 million in honor of the elder in 2016, including the $200,000. So there's two donations that occurred here. I see 200,000, and he only has to return 200,000. Interesting. The president of the
first donation was $1 million. Scroll back up because there was a donation of $1 million, and
the
someone
second
donated
donation of $1
million. And then there was something about 200,000, including 200,000 to the foundation in honor of the elder, including 200,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess 2 million got donated, $1 million by each person, and 200,000 of it's getting returned.
When I read this the second time, it doesn't necessarily say that. It could be just $1 million, and the first guy didn't want to give the $1 million, so he got his buddy, and they split half and half. It doesn't actually say that he got $2 million. The report alleged a Chinese billionaire was instructed by Beijing to donate $1 million to the foundation in 2014. The report says he and a second wealthy Chinese businessman donated $1 million in honor. Right?
So they each donated. Oh, I see. You can read it both ways.
I can read it. Yeah, you can read it both ways.
Yeah, he and a second donated $1 million. It doesn't say $1 million each. So between them, they donated $1 million.
Yeah. So it could be $2 million, or it could be $500,000 each. Right. $2 million total. Yeah, it doesn't say that, so that's interesting.
Donated that, including the 200,000 to the donation. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so, all right.
The guy says the president leader of the foundation, which the prime minister has not been involved with since becoming leader, of course, because that would be a conflict of interest. It would be a huge issue if he was involved with that. Says the amount has been refunded. That person, the CEO, said, "We cannot keep any donation that may have been sponsored by a foreign government and would not knowingly do so." Well, you only gave it back 7 years after the fact because CSIS, and that's what you're saying, who cares? CSIS did this report, and now you're returning it. So in 7 years, you didn't know.
Yeah, they don't maybe necessarily know or follow up and all, and CSIS, for whatever reason, got digging into it, and only just now is
sharing.
It's like doing an audit. It's the same thing about doing an audit, that CRA here, the Canadian Revenue Association, does an audit on you 5 years after you filed your taxes. They come back to you and say, we're going to audit your 2019 taxes.
Yeah.
Or 2015 taxes or something. You're like, what? 7 years later, you're going to audit the taxes? Well, yeah, we were just looking at stuff, and your file popped up. So I don't have a problem with it that it's 7 years later if it's been uncovered, because CSIS just is doing the work now. And so CSIS is saying this is a problem. This is a foreign government that is trying to influence the election back then. We've only discovered it now. And so the foundation, I mean, what else are they going to do about it? You can't undo the election, as it were. And okay,
No,
we're going to
but-
we're going to redo the election.
In terms of
You know,
transparency,
it's-
though, right?
Mhm.
So even more recently in the provincial election here in the province, when was that? Like 4 years ago. So as recent as that, people or parties had to return funds within 6 months because the opposition said you took funds from this, and the rules say you can't do that. Right?
Right.
The rules came under the NDP government. They changed the rules to make it quote unquote more favorable, and they make the rules more favorable for them, of course.
Right.
But they made the rules,
Yeah.
and when they ran in the last election, they said this guy didn't do that, and this is how we know, because you have to give a public
Yeah.
disclosure of your records 6 months or something after, right? And so the opposition is going, look, we can see that you've done this, right? So
Yeah.
like this foundation is only returning 7 years after the fact. They had lots and lots of time to go through all their donation lists, see what those donations are.
As you say, on the provincial level, the records are public, and I'm sure they're public on the federal level as well.
I suspect at all levels they are.
Yeah, exactly. The opposition parties have an accountant somewhere, and some of the head of the department says, hey, you junior accountant, I'm going to task you with going through this other party's donations,
Mhm.
and I want you to find any irregularities. And so they do that, and within a short period of time, the junior accountant comes back and says, I found this, this, and this.
Mhm.
And of course, that party makes it all public.
And they should, from an interest of transparency, they should do that. And they should.
Uh,
And the politicians said, we took these funds and we didn't know, but it's before the opposition finds it. We went through our own records, as you're saying, found this. We're going to return these funds because we don't think that that's it doesn't meet the threshold of, right? Whatever
Yeah,
that is.
ideally-
The opposition switches and
Right.
says, you guys are thieves because you should have done that beforehand. But that's what the opposition's job is to do, right?
Right, yeah, I mean,
Right. So
so
I don't have a
what
problem with
happened on foundation, why it took 7 years, are those records public? I don't know,
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
they're returning $200,000 7 years later. They've got a war chest that has
There it is.
how many millions of dollars in it. Forking out 200,000 isn't going to
Yeah.
hurt.
I think the optics are worth more than the $200,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do find it interesting in what way that they think it affected the election. It would be interesting to understand that a little bit better, because I didn't get any input from a Chinese source, as it were, about how I should have voted in that election. So I was kind of finding it weird. Yeah, they donated money, they gained some influence, and maybe Justin Trudeau has someone's ear,
Or someone has his ear is more likely.
yeah, someone has his ear, as far as changing policy or something that would favor China, or changing
Or whatever,
foreign
right?
policy, whatever it is as well, but without further details and all, it's really hard to say. But
Let's stay with this for a second here.
Transparency.
So
Yeah.
we kind of went through almost a full rotation, right? So this story obviously has gained some traction because, as I said, we went through two 8-minute rotations on this. How about even if CSIS does find a connection, does find voter tampering, are you going to elect them, kick them out, and then say every law that the Liberal government has done since 2016 when they got into power first, you're going to null and void all of those policies? Because China has, and we're not saying that they have, that's not what we're saying. We're using, like, we're making a leap here.
Right.
There is
Hypothetically, yeah.
connection that China has influenced the election process. What do you
Right.
do now? We're not going to say no. We're not going to we're going to erase all the history books that Trudeau was the Prime Minister of Canada because China influenced the election. We're just not going to do that.
I find it interesting that it's CSIS that is uncovering this and not, say, the Conservative Party. It was the Conservative Party because obviously we know that Justin Trudeau is the Liberal Party.
Yes.
The Conservative Party uncovered this. It would be in efforts to shoot him down, in the next election and say that, hey, do you really want the leader of your country to be influenced by a foreign source, and so you shouldn't be, you Canadian people shouldn't be voting Liberal in the next election. You should be voting Conservative.
Well, it may say that
But
tomorrow.
What? Sorry?
It may say that tomorrow. When does this article?
Yeah.
This article came out at 4:34 yesterday, right? So it's possible that
But it's been CSIS.
that'll make the news tonight. It's possible.
It was CSIS that uncovered this, not the Conservative Party. So
But
uh,
again,
will
I'm
the
not sure
Conservative
that
Party jump on it?
CSIS just goes looking for this stuff on their own. It's entirely possible that the conservative government, the conservative opposition, did exactly that. Found these irregularities. It says this needs to
Right.
deserve more, and it got sent to CSIS, who is the spy agency. And
Right.
it would be inappropriate for the conservative, like either level, the Liberals or the conservative government, to speak about this topic because of the interests of national security. And CSIS
You're
does speak
quite
on
right
that,
there.
right?
It could be that the donations are public, and an accountant in the Conservative Party was digging through things. They found something interesting, but it's not for them to elaborate on. So they pass it off to CSIS and say, "Hey, we think this is a case of national security that falls right in line with CSIS."
Yep.
And CSIS picked it up and ran with it. So it may very well be that it did come from a source like that. We don't know. We're not saying that it was them.
No, we're not saying that.
Yeah, but we're hypothetically guessing here. We're throwing out some ideas, and
Okay.
now it will be interesting to see if the Conservative Party jumps on this come the next election.
Or come sometime fairly soon. All right, we got, I think, time for one more here. Just looking at the time.
Yeah.
This is, okay, so this is not the article. Okay, so Flames could be playing final game with the current roster tonight. You want to go first? You want me to? Seeing as how I am wearing a Calgary Flames jersey.
Yeah. So this actually came up a little bit on Tuesday when we did our first broadcast.
Okay, so just before you continue there, I think you're right. I think this article was actually written before the trade deadline, and where this is only making the feed now. It could have been on the feed before, but we just happened to click it through. I don't think this is an actual, like a current article right now. That's what I believe.
Okay. So we brought this subject up when we were talking about the trading
Monday or Tuesday, yeah.
player, and it was discussed about the trade deadline. You said on Tuesday that it was about a week away. So what I'm guessing is the trade deadline. I don't know, but I'm guessing the trade line is maybe Friday midnight.
I think
you know,
the
kind of
trade
deal.
deadline was yesterday.
Was it? Okay. So
Yesterday,
but,
the day before.
yeah, I was just working on the fact that on Tuesday you said it was about a week away. That's what I was working on. But clearly, at the time of this article, the trade deadline hadn't passed yet, but it was very close, and none of the trades seemed to be panning out that they may be looking for. They couldn't get a deal done. And so it was, this could be the final roster. This looks like the final roster that they'll now have to
I'd say.
go through the playoffs, try and make the playoffs with, and hopefully do well in the playoffs.
So I went to the hockey game on Tuesday when we had the overtime loss to Boston. I've argued a couple different places that I think that was probably the best hockey we've played all year. Boston is currently the number one hockey team in the NHL. We outshot them by 37 shots. Dan Vladar, who is our backup goalie, more or less, led in 2 shots on 4 goals. Led in 2 goals on 4 shots. Sorry about that.
You know what you meant, yeah.
Yeah. And so he was pulled off the end of the first period, and then Jacob Markstrom's played the rest of the game. Calgary fights back. As we do, we take the lead 3-2 with, 5 minutes or 4 minutes left, maybe even more than that, left in the third period. We play the overtime period, and they score an overtime winner with 4.6 seconds left in the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, I texted you about it. I was actually out on 17th Avenue. I was
That's what you're
passing
saying,
different pubs and bars. And you can see the TVs.
Right.
And I could see that they were in overtime at 3-3, and there was like next to no time left. So I assumed that they lost in a shootout.
I know that would be better, right? Because of a points wise. But no,
I thought they got a point going
we get
into
1
overtime.
point for overtime loss.
Yeah.
So anyway, at that game with Aaron, who Pete and Aaron, friends of Mrs. Frostmage and I, she and I are both hockey peoples. There was 8 or 9 major trades that occurred on Monday, for Tuesday, before Tuesday night's game. Calgary had not made any changes. So I thought that was, in light of this article, Flames could be playing with the final game with the current roster tonight. Who are you trading? And just who do you trade? We don't have a goalie, or we have 2 goalies. We have our team. Right? I've always had the mindset: change the coach, offense, defense, goalie. Well, we just signed our coach to a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract, so we're not getting rid of him. So now you have those other 3 things.
You can still fire a coach.
Well, you can, but who's going to take him at this point, right? He was retired from LA. Our GM went out and deliberately went to Sutter to get him to come back. We could just pay Sutter out at this point, and he'll just retire again because he was retired before, right? So I don't think that's the right option. The offense. It's tough to say that our offense isn't working because the number 1 team, the Boston Bruins, we outshot them 37 shots more. Right? We had 57 shots or something like that on those guys, and they had 19 on us.
Right, but this is a continuing problem. Because I do read articles involving the Flames and stuff. You know, I do like to read news. So as much as I'm not really a Flames or a hockey fan anymore, I mean, when I was a kid, of course I was, but as an adult, I kind of lost interest in it. But I continually see and get this impression that Calgary outshoots tons of opponents in these games.
Yes.
And you get into the question of quality shots just because you fire a shot.
That is a term that people throw around a lot, and I disregard that. I don't think.
But there is the philosophy that getting a shot on net will create rebounds and stuff, and I think this is where Mr. Sutter goes from, and I think there's certainly validity to it. I mean, he's been a player in the NHL. He was, I believe, captain of the Chicago Blackhawks at one time. He's been coaching in the NHL. He coached with Calgary for a bit. He was with Los Angeles. I don't know if he's coached other teams. He came out of retirement, came back to him. The man is extremely knowledgeable in what he's doing, and I'm just a schmuck. But I can get behind the philosophy that you get the shots on net, you create rebounds. So I'm not saying it's a dumb idea. So they're getting the shots, they're getting the offense. They're just not scoring the goals as they need to. I know you're now moving into the offense is okay, coaching is okay. Talk about defense.
Well, I think I've reached out to some people, and I don't have any connections in the sports world, but some people that I talk to do have connections. And my comment to them is, I would be interested to know the stat on a shot that is made from anywhere that isn't tipped, right? Just so Dubé makes a shot from out front there, and it goes straight in. I'd be interested to know how many of those shots are goals, and how many shots they make that Dubé makes, and Lucic tips it in, or Backlund tips it in, because that is the quality shots, and you hinted on exactly that point, right? Shots on net versus the quality shots on net. I think it's a misleading term. I don't actually know, but these guys are all professionals. I would argue that most goals are tip-ins, right?
Yeah.
Goalies, if they can see the puck coming at them, should be able to stop most of those shots. They're professionals. It's the goals that get tipped in. You make a shot, and you see there's another one. We're going overtime. They make the shot, and Crosby bats it out of the air.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, how you shouldn't pull your goalie because you lose by that. Like, that's an anomaly. That's incredible. That speaks to the athleticism that they have, right? So
the question I have is, all these shots that the Flames are taking, like, what if it's wide and hits the boards behind the net? Are they counting that as a shot?
They do. So there's two different metrics that we're using there. The first one is shots on net, and that's actually got to be like 150 shots probably in a game. And then you have shots on goal, which is shots that go in and that the goalie stops, whether it's a tip or whatever, like direct in, right? So if the shots on net are in the hundreds, or 100 shots, more than 100 shots in a game, easily more than 100 shots.
So when I read that the Flames took 100 shots, or took 50 shots last night, those are shots that
went in and were saved by the goalie.
Or blocked by a defenseman in front?
No. That's a shot on the net.
The shots made it all the way to the net.
Yes.
Okay.
And the goalie.
Okay, so those are good shots to me. Because if you're taking 50 shots, but you got lousy aim, and you're hitting the glass above the net, and you're hitting the boards beside the net,
you just let those guys take those shots all day long. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if you're taking 50 shots, and those shots are making it through to the net, and the goalie's having to stop those shots, then
that's a far different.
Your offense is functioning properly.
Yeah.
It's functioning good.
So when I say that our offense had 57 or 58 shots on the Boston Bruins, of those four things, the coach, the offense, we had 57 shots, right? Mm-hmm. That you cannot say that our offense isn't working, because it is. It shows the results. And then people like to argue, and they throw that comment you just made there. Well, quality shots. No. This is why I want to see what the direct shot is versus a tipped in shot. Our offense is firing, for sure it is. Absolutely it is. Our offense decimated their defense. All right, let's continue on with the same comment. So in the Boston game, we had 57 shots on net. They had 5 shots in the first period. In the first period, they scored twice. So our defense shut down their offense because they only had 5 shots.
Right.
The average in an NHL hockey game is right around the 30 to 35 shots on net, or shots on goal percentage. They had 19 the whole game. That tells you that our defense is working. So now we got those four things again. The coach, offense is working, the defense is working. Now it comes down to the goaltending. And for Calgary, I think this is the issue, right? We have some good goaltenders, contrary to what the stats are, but their head is not in the game. And that's problematic. If we can get either one or both of those goalies to turn up red hot, like we haven't even talked about this article yet. If we get both one or both of
we're
them,
way off topic here. Yeah.
But I think it's in line with. I think
But
it's.
instead, you're talking about the roster now.
Yeah.
We're going to have to finish out the season with the current roster, goalies included.
Yeah, I think Sutter, because we're talking about the roster, the fact that they didn't have any trades on Monday, Tuesday, I think Sutter's already saying that we're going to stay with these guys, right? I don't think there's any discussion to pull a Jonathan Quick move here at all, and I'd be hard pressed if that occurs, right? You know what I'm talking about here, right? Okay, so Jonathan Quick was the goalie for LA Kings. I thought he was only there for 10 years. As I found out from talking to Rihanna last night, he spent his whole career at LA for 16 years. On Monday, Tuesday, when the deadline is coming through, or whether they're working through those deadlines, no discussion was that, hey, Jonathan, I think we're going to look at trying to trade you here. You're interested. Where do you want to go? None of that was decided. None of that was discussed with him. He just woke up yesterday and, oh, by the way, you've been traded to here. You're expected to play tonight. Right? Yeah. He was blindsided by all of that. If that occurs now, because we didn't have any of that discussion on Monday, Tuesday, that would be problematic. There's discussion on our team of 3 people. Lucic, I think, is clubbing close to the end of his career. So I think we're going to keep him as well. And we talked about the expansion the other day, his salary. So I think he'll stay with us. Mackenzie Weegar, who we got in the trade with for Johnny Gaudreau, as well as Huberdeau as a defenseman. He's still with us. And then Oliver Shillington. Now, Shillington, we're not really sure what's happening with him. He left at the end of last season for personal reasons and has not shown up, has not played a game this season. My understanding is that the office people for the Calgary Flames reached out to Shillington to find out what is you're doing, because we have to decide and trade deadlines, all the rest of it. And Shillington did not get back to him. If there's going to be a trade, that would be at least the one guy. But our group said, no, we're not doing that. Right? I think he's on long-term injury reserve, and there's no reason to suspect that there's personal issues or not. No reason to think that there's substance issues in there. But it seems a bit strange that if there's a death in the family, that you would take the whole 3/4 of the season off to deal with that. So.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Let's quickly.
How long has Barry Price been away from, dealing with his issues? Those are the kinds of things that.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. Absolutely.
For a whole season for. Yeah. So, what you're saying is there was no discussion about acquiring a goaltender that can be consistent.
Yeah.
And get us into the playoffs and lead us through the playoffs.
I'd be shocked if that occurs. If this article says anything like that. What's that?
Yeah, despite the fact that we're now pinning the lack of success, because we're out of the playoffs right now. We're fighting for a wild card spot, and we're just a couple of points. I think last I saw we were 4 points out of a wild card spot.
This article says exactly that. With only 21 games remaining, they sit 5 points shy of both the Jets.
Oh, I see. Yeah, now,
for playoffs.
And the Kraken, yeah.
Okay.
Again, because I'm kind of following a little bit, looking up, and last I saw was 4 points.
I think we would be playing for that 8th spot at this point, right? It'll be difficult for us. Even if we go 50-50, it'll be difficult for us to maintain. And we can't go 50-50 because 50-50 keeps us at exactly where we are right now, right? We need to win probably 14.
We can go 50-50 if the other team's bomb.
Yeah, but you can't control that, whether they're bombing. You can only control your own play, right? So I think we need 13 or 14 wins.
50-50, yeah.
While there's instrumental inconsistent play. Now, see, and this is what we just talked about, right? The fact that we're outshooting our opponents most of the time. 70% of the time we're out shooting them and we're still losing. There's something happening there. Shit, we go through a lot of stuff. Trevally.
As a team,
What's that?
As a team, do you get psyched up to play the number one team in the league, and everybody, is firing on all cylinders, but then the Montreal Canadiens, who are unfortunately, they're not. I don't think they're bottom of the league, but like bottom four
close.
or something. Do they show up to play a game here, and you're kind of like, it's just the Montreal Canadiens. They suck this year.
Our
We
team
can
has that
cope
mentality,
with it."
yes. I do
Okay.
believe our team does that. We
Okay.
beat Colorado. We beat Seattle and the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? And which are the top 3 teams, 4 teams, 5 teams in the league, and we lose to Detroit twice. We lose to not Edmonton, Montreal, who's at the bottom of the league. Like the 2 bottom teams, we lost in 5 days. We lost to those 3 teams all 3 times. We're losing to the
Right.
very worst teams, and we're playing our very best and winning against the top teams.
Except against Boston, but
Except
yeah,
Boston.
okay. All right then.
As I
Okay.
said earlier on, and I texted you this, I mean, I think we played our very best game in Boston. And if our team plays
Yeah.
that way for the rest of the season, we make it in the playoffs, right? But if
Yeah.
we don't have all 4 of those things firing at the same time, we're not going to make it.
Right, okay.
Team's in a tough spot, making it extremely difficult for Trevelyan to make decision ahead of Friday's trade deadline. So there we go, right? That's tomorrow.
So it is Friday. It is tomorrow.
Which is what I
I-
thought it was when we talked about this. Yeah.
Yeah, because the article actually said posted 1 hour ago or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. This was
A
it doesn't really
recent
say
article.
about an hour ago. About an hour ago, yeah.
So I figured trade deadline has to be
3 p.m.
hasn't passed. Yeah.
3 p.m. on Friday. So that'll be 1 o'clock our time, I guess. I'm assuming that it could be 5 o'clock their time, which would be 3 o'clock ours, because it doesn't say whether it's Mountain Standard Time or Eastern Standard Time. But I think the
Right.
office is out east. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
tonight's
Hey.
game. Go ahead.
NHL offices are probably New York and Toronto, which would be
Yes.
Eastern
I think they're in
time,
Toronto,
so-
right?
Yeah, but New York, Toronto, I'm thinking
Yeah.
they probably have offices both sides.
When they go when the NHL goes looking upstairs, they're going to Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which leads me to the conclusion that's where the head office is. They're going to Toronto
Right,
to
okay.
review this puck or whatever else it is. Anyway, with a win against a loaded Maple Leafs team, capable, if they lose, they're going to be done. That means tonight could be the last time we see this team. So they have to win tonight is what this person is saying here. Who is this? Colton Pankig Cow. Let's start with the obvious ones. Pending UFA Trevor Lewis. We should not trade Trevor Lewis. We should keep him. And that's his pitcher there, by the way. That is Lewis.
That's Trevor Lewis.
Yeah. And the interest he could gain from several teams, though he's by no means a game breaker, proven by his 16 points through 61 games. He's dependable 4th line center who can play on the penalty kill. I think we should keep him. He brings plenty of winning experience.
He's an unrestricted free agent.
What's that?
Isn't the problem? He's an unrestricted free agent. He's
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
where the problem lies.
his
It's the same
contract.
problem we had with Gaudreau.
Mhm.
It's the same problem we had last year with Gaudreau. Okay, keep going.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up. Most of the time, so Gaudreau is in a 5-year contract with Calgary. We started negotiating with him in his 4th year, and he was
Mhm.
sucking ass in his 4th year.
Yeah.
And so the story has come out since then that his parents, his dad, I suspect more than his mom, but his parents said, no, we're not taking that offer that Calgary was giving him. We can get more money for him. Says yes,
Mhm.
but his play this year alone says he's not worth that. So you see that Gaudreau played like ass the first 4 years of his contract, and then on his 5th year, he ties scoring records and certainly is the top for us and blah, 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 the rest of that stuff. Well, what happened to you in the 5th year, right? And we wanted to negotiate, and we did negotiate. This is what we're offering for you in your 4th year because that's what you're worth. And the argument, he goes to Columbus for less money than we were offering him, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
The way it all worked out. Yeah, the way it all worked out.
Yeah, someone's ego got in the way there, right? I think Lewis is worth the money. I think he plays well for our team. He brings a lot of experience to the team. As it says, he won 2 Stanley Cups with LA. Coincidentally, both under Sutter. Could fetch a mid-round pick for the Flames. Yeah, potentially. Brett Ritchie is another guy on there. Lewis, little terms and offers very little in terms of offensive punch, but head coach Sutter is growing to like him due to his high compete level. Yeah, they show up every single shift, every single game. That's what they bring. That's why we keep these guys. While you may have a difficult time earning an everyday role, GM or two willing to add as a depth piece. Final UFA is Milan Lucic, right? And that's one of the ones I said. It'll be tough for him to make it through this year. And frankly, I think Luch will probably want to retire. Actually, I think he'll want to retire. Final pending UFA is Lucic. Speculation picked up yesterday after his wife commented on an Instagram post that made it clear they're hoping to be sent back to the Boston Bruins because he played for Boston. So I went to the Boston game and I was mesmerized by how many Boston Bruin jerseys there were. Like, what is going on here? It didn't occur to me that Lucic actually played for Boston for many, many years. And then he was traded here. So they all have Lucic jerseys on, right? So they're a fan of the man, not the team. I think Luch wants to go back there, especially that Boston is the number one team. His chances of winning in the Stanley Cup, his best chances are with Boston. He'd like to finish his team, right? Signing a 1-day contract with those teams so he can retire a player of that team. Like, they do that all the time, right?
Does happen, yes. Yeah.
Given the Bruins' talented roster, it's hard to see Lucic earning a spot in the lineup, but crazier things have happened. Lucic isn't even top on ours. He's 4th line on our team, right? Crazier, if not the Bruins, perhaps another team will be willing to take a chance on him. Going to be difficult. Despite being on the IR with a lower body defenseman Michael Stone, I think that's the same grit that they shows up as Lewis there. Flames have many players set to become UFAs at the end of next year's campaign, a number of whom would bring back a series haul. Elias Lindholm, Toffoli, Backlund, Hanifin, Tanev, Zadorov all fall into that. We should not trade any of those guys. That's our core team. Those guys show up every day, right? We got a hell of a steal from on Chris Tanev out of Vancouver. We should keep that guy for sure. Whispers that Trevelyan might be considering moving a few of them ahead of the deadline when the return would likely be bigger than in the offseason. I don't know. Again, he's a pro and he knows these things better than I do, and he's the back door, so it's right. Can't call into that too much question there. With that said, many of them moving, particularly Lindholm and Foley, wouldn't be easy. It would just be retooling. Again, I think you wait until the offseason to trade these guys. If you do, I think you stay with these guys for the rest of the season. That wouldn't be a very good look for a team that just handed out extensions to both Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar, and neither would be happy about it. Yeah. Difficult decisions looming. Whether he's made up his mind, we'll find out. The Leafs, who played poorly against Edmonton last night. Yay! That means they won. If the Leafs win, a very good chance we'll see a player or two shipped out at some point tomorrow. I don't know. That said, perhaps the thought of losing teammates is enough motivation for Sutter's squad to come out and play one of their best games. Well, you have to. As I just said, you have to play your best game. But I think if we play anything like we did against Boston, that's a good team. Thoughts?
Well, it doesn't sound like they're going to be making any trades. Sounds like on the management level, they're happy with the team that they have. And it sounds more like, these players, these guys have to show up to play game in and game out. That's a coaching thing. He's got to motivate his players. Again, Sutter experience. He's almost won a cup. We got robbed as it goes in Calgary. He won a cup in LA. So clearly he has the chops to coach. He's got to get these players focused and moving along with the team that they decided that they're keeping this, that we're not going to go looking for a goaltender. So
Yeah, stay with it.
21 games, sorry?
Stay with it. Stay with the team you got.
Yep, 21 games to try and make the playoffs, appease the fans, and make a playoff run with it.
So prediction: we make trades after tonight's game for tomorrow, or we stay with the team we got. I already told you what I think.
It sounds like they're staying with the team.
Stay with the team we got. Yeah, good call.
Stay with the team they've got. Reading the article, they've got no intention. And it sounds like if you were going to do a trade, it would be looking for a goaltender anyways, and that's not even on the horizon. So
although that article didn't mention a goaltender issue there at all. I think if there is, that is where the issue is. But
unless some team reaches out to the Calgary Flames within the next 24 hours and says, we will give you this player that's, and all we want is this from you, where it's such a good deal that you can't turn it down. I just don't see a trade, I guess, happening in the next 24 hours. So.
Okay, so let's, just before we end, so that's your final thoughts then?
Yep.
That's my final thoughts as well. Stay with the same team. We're over time here for sure, but obviously that's what happens when you get some of these really tough articles, right? There's 2 stories that we went overtime and went full overtime. So maybe who cares offline here? He and I will discuss some rejigging about topics, or how do we keep us on topic a little bit more? I don't know. But let's give a final shout out here. Our sponsor, Yuck Yucks, is here in town. Who cares? You want to spend just a minute and share us a little bit about these guys, who they are, what they do?
About Yuck Yucks, so stand-up comedy. I do work for the club. Come on down and check out a couple of shows. We're every Friday and Saturday. We're online. Get your tickets online. It's a great fun night out. Laugh some. Have a good time, have something to eat, a couple of drinks, and enjoy yourselves. It's always a great time.
I'm just putting this out there. I'm not guaranteeing anything just yet, but as you just heard, Who Cares works at Yuck Yucks. If you come down to Yuck Yucks and talk to him and say that you heard of Yuck Yucks via the comment on Random Shit Guys, he'll give you a 2-for-1 or some sort of deal to get you a couple tickets in there. I'm just putting that out there. I haven't worked out the details with that guy yet.
What's a code word?
Comment on Random Shit Guys.
Yeah, there you go. Come and say, I want to talk to the Random Shit Guy.
Yeah.
And I'll hook you up with some tickets for sure.
And we'll know who you are. Okay, he'll know who you are, and we'll get you something. I don't know. Let's give it. So that's our shout out for Yuck Yucks, that are our sponsors. I am my co-host here is Who Cares. I am Noob Frostmage. Thank you for coming in, guys. We are going to continue to work and rejig. The plan is every Monday and Thursdays from 12 o'clock until 1. It turns out it's 1:15, so we're a little bit late, but that's okay.